Last week, I snuck in an episode where my sister interviewed me for the podcast. I felt it was time that I introduced myself properly. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I invite you to do that, but not before you listen to this episode with Drita Protopapa. Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in. Drita Protopapa loves languages and communicating with people from other cultures and beliefs. This is true for both her personal and her professional lives. She's pretty sure this impacted her decision to open her agency, MAPA Translations Inc., and offers a host of language services which include written translations, interpretation, and multilingual voiceovers. In addition to being the founder of MAPA, she's also a trilingual English, Portuguese, and Spanish voice actor and trained medical and community interpreter. Connecting and communicating is what she's all about. Hello, Drita. How are you? It is so good to have you here.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I am very excited about it.
Same here.
Drita, before we get into the meat and potatoes, like I like to say, we're going to just do a couple of, really easy questions that are about you so you can tell us a little bit about yourself. And the first question is, what are you passionate about right now?
That's a good question to ask me because I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I'll keep it brief. I think if I had to whittle it down, I would really say I'm passionate about justice. People, especially underdogs, especially underrepresented minorities, the people that we serve in my business. I feel like we're here to give them a voice, and that is of extreme importance to me. I would say secondary to that and related to that is anything that has to do with women's rights or women being supportive of other business women, underprivileged women, just women in general, anywhere. I'm involved with a couple of organizations. I'm sure we'll touch on that later, but I feel like we have to support our own, right? And we have to really give back. And I think that comes from being the child of immigrants and seeing them do this sort of, I guess we would call it social service, social justice action throughout their entire lifetimes and throughout my lifetime. And so it's just sort of been passed on and handed down through the generations. But yeah, we're definitely fight for justice and fight for women. Those are my two big themes.
Well, awesome. That means we're going to have a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're kind of similar.
Yes.
I think there's some overlap here.
A little bit. So in thinking about that, what you're passionate about, and thinking of who you are, what would you consider to be your superpower? And is your superpower tied into what you're passionate about?
I think it's definitely tied in. It's sort of something that I've become more clear about recently, but I would say that my true superpower is as a connector. My job seems to be to connect people in all ways, in all shape and form. It's not just like personal connections, business connections, opportunities, connecting people who may not have access to opportunities because of language, because of culture, because of their socioeconomic status. I'm this sort of in-between person where I see A over here, B over here, and I'm like, oh, those two need to get together. And it's sort of like, I know that other people have that, but I'm like, I almost like can't not act on it. It's like there's some moral obligation for me to do it. Like, I'm like, if you don't connect these two people, something bad will happen. It's that intense for me. It's like, I have to, there's so many, funny examples, but there's this great South African singer that I just fallen in love with his sound and everything. And I have a lot of musician friends and people at Berkeley. And I was like, oh, I like started listening to his stuff. And immediately, like after I was like, oh, I just love his sound. And then I'm like, oh, who can I connect with him with here so that he can come to a show in Boston so that we can all hear him live, literally like, and then I actually did it. I made the email connection and now we're all sort of talking. So it's funny.
That's
it's like,
awesome.
Yeah. It's like a moral obligation. It's like you've
right. I can't keep it to myself.
Yeah.
I must share.
I must share. Exactly. It's like, to the rescue, Drita, we'll connect you. I don't know. Like I did a cape or something. I don't know. Purple cape.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, that's good, because as I think of the next question is, what is something that has happened to you along your travels that seems fantastical, that if you tell the story, some people might go, no, that can't be real, but it actually did happen and people need to hear it.
Right.
What is something?
Yeah. Well, I always tell people there's a lot of serendipity in my life. So there's lots of like little funny stories, but I'm not going to tell you a funny story today. I'm going to tell you kind of a serious story that impacted me greatly and deeply. As you may know, I'm an interpreter. I think you already know that. And, sometimes I go to immigration and sometimes I'm asked to interpret for asylum cases. And I would say that of all the immigration related interpreting that I've done, the asylum cases are always the toughest. So I actually, on a day where I know I'm going to go into Boston and do that, I clear my schedule. I don't put anything else on my calendar. I assume I'm going to take the rest of the day off after I'm done interpreting because it's so intense. You know how they talk about like vicarious trauma for doctors and psychologists and social workers and counselors and attorneys even, well, interpreters have that too. So this story, we'll keep it short, but basically there was a woman from Angola and it's Portuguese speaking and I speak Portuguese. So I went in and she was telling her story and she was recounting some very traumatic, very, heavy stuff. So basically to summarize it, I'll say that she was gang raped by officials from her country who were looking for her husband. Who was home alone with her kids, I think 2 or 3 kids. This was almost midnight. And as she was recounting her story, the immigration officer that was asking her the questions, who happened to be male and Caucasian, was, I would say, like deadpan and disinterested in her story and seemed to, have no sensitivity around what she was saying because he kept asking her these questions about the amount of time that the people spent in her home. And I thought to myself, like, nobody that's being gang raped is looking at their watch or their clock wondering, what time is it and how long has this lasted? Ooh. So it was heavy, but I, because one of our roles as interpreters is to be an advocate and to sort of step into this kind of defender role, like literally an advocate for that person if they aren't able to advocate for themselves, whether it's for language, in her case, she was like frozen. Imagine you're recounting your story and you're recounting it to 2 strangers, me, the interpreter, and this very stone-faced, unresponsive officer who's basically your fate and your future is in their hands, right? So there's there's tension, there's stress, there's reliving the trauma, there's so many things happening. And in this case, recounting a very traumatic situation. And so basically I stepped out of my role as an interpreter and I looked at the officer and I said, I don't think that this person can recall the amount of time these individuals spent in her home because she's a victim of trauma, and trauma victims often forget details about their traumatic experience because they need to do that to survive. Yeah. And that was all I said. And then I was like, okay, you can ask your next question.
Right.
Basically, with not so many words, I told him, cut it out. Not only did I say that, but I was like beaming my glaze at him, like my gaze, not glaze, gaze at him, like, yeah, glaze. I don't know where that came from, but sometimes I mix words up. It's kind of funny. So I was really like, I fixed my gaze on him so that he understood that I meant business. Like I'm listening, I'm watching, and this is not appropriate. So he quickly, changed his line of questioning. And then, as we were walking out and going into the elevator after the full interview was done, I mean, this woman was just a blank stare. It was like she was gone. She checked out. It was really, but again, I feel that the good news and the upside of that story that's very difficult is that thank goodness I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness there was an interpreter there, and an interpreter that knows that that's one of our roles, is to step up to the plate and speak up. Um,
Yeah.
Oftentimes people feel intimidated by that role, and I think they hesitate to do it because it isn't like, thankfully, we don't have to pull that advocate card out that often, but when we
Mm-hmm.
do, we really have to do it. Like, it's almost, like being a mandated reporter of child abuse or something like that. It's sort of like on the,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as interpreters, we hear and see things that may not even be spoken. And,
Mm-hmm.
obviously her body, I'm sitting right next to her. So her body language, her facial expression, the quiver in her voice, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that this woman is reliving her trauma right in front of our, tears are just streaming down her face. And I'm just like,
Right.
this guy's got to stop. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
the only one
Mm-hmm.
in the room, I'm the only other person. That's a big
Wow.
part of what we do. And I feel like
Yeah.
when I leave an encounter like that and I think, okay, why was I put on this earth to do this? And, it's so hard and it's so draining and it's so intense. But I also feel that it's important and that I can do it and that I do it well. And I do it in a way where, people feel comfortable and trust
Mm-hmm.
me, because what
Right.
you revealed that day in that interview was heavy, heavy stuff. And, it would be almost near impossible to even tell, your own mother or your sister or your best friend, let alone a complete stranger. So I think what I'm really
Yeah.
good at in that connector role is making somebody feel immediately connected to me,
Mm-hmm.
so that their guard is down and that they can tell the truth and they can tell their story, especially
Yeah.
in those asylum cases. It's critical. They have to, like, I sometimes think that people here in the US don't always understand the level of violence and fear and terror that some people live with in their own homes or in their own countries. We're so
Yes.
sort of like, oh, everything's great here and no, there's no fear.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's got levels.
right,
It's got
right.
levels.
But
But
many people don't live in
yeah,
that. They live in a realm where they think
right,
the officials aren't going to come and hurt you in your home. You know,
right,
the people that are
right.
supposed to be protecting you there's an assumption, hopefully, that they are doing their
Yeah,
job. Whereas the assumption is that they're not, that you can't trust them
yeah,
any more than the next guy, and so
right.
that level is intense in other countries, and especially in a place like Angola, where
Yeah,
there's just rampant corruption and just
yeah,
violence, and
yeah,
there's political factions, and it's just so much. So
yeah. Which kind of brings me to thinking about how traumatic it is right now for those parents whose children were taken from them while they're running and seeking help. And, it's
right,
out of the frying pan and into the fire. And
exactly.
that kind of trauma is like, it's unfathomable for us, I
Mhm.
think,
I agree.
because because I feel myself, if I venture to even begin to try to understand that trauma, it's too much for me. It's overwhelming and I don't want to go there.
Right. It's
Right.
too much to bear.
It's too much to bear.
It's
um
intense. I think, when you're talking about an adult, it's kind of one thing. When you're talking about children who they didn't ask to come here, they weren't like, yeah, sign me up. I want to cross, into the United States
right,
and be on the run. And,
right.
nobody asks for that. And especially children. And so often they are brought, against their will, I guess you could say that,
Yeah, but sometimes,
unknowing.
I mean, sometimes they're brought because it's better than leaving them behind.
Right.
If you leave them
Yeah,
behind, I mean, it's like, what do you do if you're running out of a burning house? You're not going to
right.
leave your child and say, "I'll be right back to
Right.
get some help." You know what I mean? You're going to take
Yeah.
that child with you, and so it's kind of, it's really tough. And I think that we're supposed to care for the least of us, and that's not a national thing. That is a world thing. That is a human thing. We're supposed to
Yes.
care for the least of us as humans.
So,
So in order to do something like that, I feel that we have to dehumanize these people and make them out to be what things that they're not,
right.
from our perspective, and be okay with that kind of trauma that's being inflicted on them. I think that it's sad.
It's
you
very,
know it's So I think that it's really, you say, why were you chosen to do this kind of work? I think that it is your superpower, right? It's what you're meant to do, and you have the ability to do it, and to also know to take care of yourself afterward, so that you can process and then get back into the trenches. And that's a beautiful thing, because not a lot of people, I mean, just like the man that you were sitting across, who just, I don't know that was his superpower.
You think? Yeah, no, he definitely, but it's, there's a funny little to that story. The next time I went to immigration, which was a while later,
Yeah.
I saw this person, because I remember I, took note of his full name and all that, because I thought, I need to write this person up. Need to know who their official name is. But he saw me and he was like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh, what?" Like, you really you actually like me? Like, you want to talk? Because I don't really like you that much. So why are you saying hello to me? It was hilarious. Right. And I even checked. I have a good friend who's now retired, but she's an immigration attorney. And I checked in with her. I said, "Do you know Officer so and so?" She said, "Oh yeah. He's been written up many times." I said, "Oh, well, I had my first dealing with him today." And I told her, more or less the story.
Yeah.
She was like, "I'm not surprised." And I said, "Well, hopefully after today, he won't, And then that next time I saw him, I was like, wow, so in an interesting way, maybe nobody had actually called him out before. So I also feel like that's part of the superpower, is that I don't know who I'm going to impact by speaking up. I don't know who's going to hear the message, but he obviously heard the message. Now, I don't know if he improved overall. He, was a momentary lapse and he was like friendly to me. I don't know. And I can't necessarily think about it too much, but I can say that inside, I know like I did the right thing, and that I at least impacted her life, that I made a difference for the person I was interpreting for. That's the person I most cared about. If it spilled over into him, and that in future interviews and other asylum cases, he was a better officer and a kinder and more compassionate officer, that would be like gravy. That would be like triple icing on the cake, like I don't have that expectation, but if that did happen, I'd throw a party just for that. And I like parties. Ask anybody that knows me. I love to celebrate everything and anything.
Oh my gosh. Me too. I'm right there with you. So in your opinion, where do we stand in this country with race and racism? Like where are we, and where do you see us going? If we're going forward, or we're going backward, or we're just staying in place, where do you see this?
I don't, that's such a tough question to answer. And I feel like the answer is all of the above.
Right.
There are days where I have like faith, and I think like, yeah, we're moving through this, we're moving forward. Then I think like, is it 1952 again? Did I miss something? Or are we like, did we go back? Am I in a time machine? I think, did we cover that already? Aren't we all past that? Haven't we all dealt with that already? But, an interesting thing, I did live in the South for a while in Texas. And I can say that even just, sort of from being from New England, and I went to school down there, and then I went back and I lived there as an adult for a while. Regionally, geographically, this country is diverse.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in a good way. There are pockets in places, and even within states that you think are quite progressive or forward-thinking or open-minded or anti-racist, there are pockets. And I think what's happening currently, given the sort of national environment, I'll say it that way, that there are some folks who feel that it's okay to be outwardly highly vocal about their anti-racist sentiments. And honestly, like, I do believe people are allowed to feel what they feel and believe what they believe, but not to hurt, not to the detriment of others, not to be hurtful to others. I can have my opinion, you can have a different opinion, but I'm not necessarily going to take my opinion and go out and hurt people with it, or spread it out to incite people to act against another group of people. I believe it has a lot to do with how you're raised. And so my story is that my parents were both political refugees fleeing communism from two very different religions. My dad was raised Muslim, but never practiced it here. My mother was raised Lutheran, practiced a little bit here. So for them, just my own parents are already an example of like completely different. They were two different countries, two different religions, two different people, came together and raised a family in this tiny little town outside of Boston that was at the time, it's a little different now, but at the time was highly undiverse. I always jokingly say like our family and the Bose family, like as in Bose, the audio speaker company, we were the two diverse families in Wayland growing up. Yeah, I know, not a great statement. Maybe like there was one other family that was diverse. I think we have one African American family and us, and maybe one like Asian Chinese family. And so from the get-go, we were sort of different. And because my parents spoke with an accent, and, you know, when my friends would come over, that was like they were stepping into another world, you know, and for me, it was just my world. It was my parents, it was my family, my household, the way we were raised. And I think it's, maybe I alluded to it earlier, but maybe from my standpoint, my worldview was that. And I grew up in a town where people were like either Catholic or Jewish. So I'd go to Catholic church, I'd go to Jewish temple, I celebrated everything. To me, like there was no difference. Like all of it seemed normal. But when you get out into the real world and you start realizing that people are not raised that way, people are raised oftentimes in a very tunnel vision kind of way. Yeah. Where they're told, this is the way, this is the religion, this is the way we treat people who look different than us, who think different from us, who speak different from us, who have a belief system that's different from us. And there's more separation as opposed to we are all one. And my belief to this day is we are all one. We are actually all connected from the very first human, you know? So for me, like you're related to me already, like by definition. We're all related to each other, but that's not I don't think that's a typical worldview. And I think, you know, that's part of the problem is that we're coming from our worldviews as people who have experienced diversity from birth, you know, and other people have not, you know, and that's how do we reach them? I think that's the biggest question is how do you reach them without feeling like you're preaching at them or angry with them, or you may feel all those things, but how do you get them to be on our team? You know, like how do you get them over to this side to understand like, this is a perspective that's highly different than yours, but can you just step into this person's shoes for one moment and kind of try to vicariously live some of these moments that they experienced because people say, oh, I don't, you know, your friend who's Black, she experienced a racist, you know, event in her life while living in such and such a town. I'm like, you really asked me that question? Like, yeah, her sons, you know, her neighbors, like they call the police on her if she has more than 3 people over in there, like they're loud. You know, I'm like, okay, You know, I think, why are people shocked by this? Well, then I remember maybe some people don't have friends that don't look like them or don't talk like them or don't think like them. Right. Their language. That's like the norm for me. You know, right.
Yes. And for me too, which of course I have a very hard time understanding the angst or the animosity or whatever it is that is spewed towards people who are different from whomever, right? Yes. I don't get it. It goes over my head.
I'm on the same page with you. It's weird. It's weird to me that, you know.
Yeah. I think that there are people who are ready to see a different perspective. And then there are people who will not be ready for a while.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
Yep.
I just say, know the difference and protect yourself from the difference, right? Do not engage in a battle of wits or a battle of facts or a battle of history with someone who's just not ready. Don't do it. But then with someone who is ready, just get to know them. Just talk to them and begin to, I mean, you don't know. There's this quote that says, you may be the only Jesus that someone ever meets if you believe in Jesus, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is so true.
And if that is true, then what are you being, right? Just be that. Be you and allow for things to kind of flow.
You said a key word, and that was listen, you know, and I think that's the key in all of this. Like, how can we move forward? Because I'm sort of like, I can't change what's already happened, but we can change moving forward, each and every one of us, right? So what we can do is when we do come across somebody who has a highly, you know, dramatically different opinion than ours on the issue of race,
Mm-hmm.
You need to listen to them, no matter how hard it is, because some of what they say may be like earth-shatteringly difficult, right? But wouldn't you want them to listen to you, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be fair, right? I can't be just like, oh, shh, I don't want to hear what you say. I have to listen, as hard as it might be, and try to understand, what is their perspective? Why do they feel this way? What was their life experience in growing up, and their family, and where in the part of the country they're from?
Sure.
That
Their socialization will be totally different than yours or mine.
It's created this. You're not born that way. That's not one of those things. Oh, somebody's born racist. I don't know.
It's the socialization.
It's socialization. And you've seen it with kids. You see all the funny memes that go around, the videos, like kids don't know color or this or that, and it's true in the sense that children who are so pure, they don't see any of this. They don't know what you're talking about when you start saying racism and discrimination.
So here's right. And one thing that right. And one thing that I always like to point out, though, is that kids do see color. Kids see the difference, but they don't attach any negativity to the differences. They simply see the differences. But what happens is adults step in and say, don't talk about that. That's not right. That's not nice. That's not this. That's not that. And then they begin to grow with this idea of, well, if I talk about Black people, or if I talk about, Asian, if that's not a good conversation. You can't talk about that. Then it becomes taboo, and then it becomes an issue, right? Where I say, talk to the kids about race. There's nothing wrong with talking to your kids about Black people, Asian people, Native people, just all kinds of people, because then when you do that, they will develop a comfort with talking about people and about situations the way that they are, versus with this anxiety with talking about it. Then when they see something that doesn't fit properly, they can speak up, because they've learned to speak up. Exactly. And talk about things. Otherwise, they're just going to be like, oh, I don't want to see that.
Right. But even if, like what you're saying, if they're uncomfortable in a certain situation because of how somebody looks, that's also okay, in the sense that they can express it.
Right. Express it.
Mistreat that person or treat them differently. But it's okay if they're not sure. Like, maybe they've never seen somebody from Asia or from Nigeria or from Brazil or from where. It's okay. But here's this person. And guess what? There's actually more similarities than differences. And if you can, kids are teachable, right?
Yeah.
Kids are like sponges. So I think it's the prime age, and maybe, it's a conversation for another podcast, but would be to, how do we instill that education? Because we can't get into every single home in the country, right, that needs this.
No.
But we can help educators and schools and people that do work with children incorporate this into the curriculum. We could, find a way to have them engage in these conversations, even if they're not happening at home. If they're happening at home, that's great. But if they're not, where is it along the way,
that they'll hear? Yeah.
There was something, even I came across an app recently around when I was planning my International Women's Day event, and I saw this app, and it was about women in history. Yeah. And if you think back on your history class when you were a kid in school, how many famous women, like Louisa May Alcott, something like, there's one or two people, like who was the lady that did the flag, there's like three people maybe max,
right.
We heard about Harriet Tubman maybe, and then everybody else was either like tried as a witch in Salem, or God knows what, they did something bad. Their head was cut off on a guillotine. I don't know. Like, think about who were the heroines, who were the people that we could say, oh, historically these thousands of women did X, Y, and Z to impact current day life in the world. We don't have that. And so I think it's a similar kind of thing. Like, if we can teach people about women in history and all the great things women have done forever, we could do the same thing with racism and anti-racism, really, is that it doesn't have to exist. You don't have to feel that way. And it's really good not to feel that way. It actually feels better to not be racist. Your life will be better if you're not racist, actually, I think. I don't know if that's a proven fact, but I think we can get it scientifically proven.
Well, racism has a very, very high cost. There's a very high cost to racism, and it's not only monetary, it is also social
100%.
For everyone involved.
Yep.
So it is definitely important to kind of get away from the system of racism and be able to grow from there. And we have to also remember, you said that the kids are teachable. Adults are teachable too.
Yes.
We like to think that adults, as adults, we like to think, well, this is how I've done it, and this is how this is just how I am. Right. And that's not true.
Right.
Adults are teachable.
Yes.
And if you keep your mind open, I tell my son all the time, don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do. Don't tell me what, how bad it is. Tell me how good it is, because wherever you take your mind, that's where you're going.
Exactly.
And if you say, I can't, then sure, you can't, because you just told yourself that you couldn't do it.
You literally just confirmed the outcome, because you said it 5 times. Well, and I just I want to qualify my earlier statement and say that, yes, adults are teachable, but they're less sponge-like.
They're less sponge-like. Yes.
Can you give me that?
I can. Absolutely. That is absolutely true. They're not absorbing everything that comes to them the way that kids are.
There's a little less porousness, there's
yes.
I think with
they're a little stiffer,
a little harder, a little less accessible, but I totally agree. And I think it's not that we shouldn't address adults and we shouldn't try to also help them see a different perspective, but I think it's just a bigger challenge. It is
definitely a bigger challenge.
Yeah. More time has passed with their beliefs. So it's kind of like the joke, you tell kids you get your parents so late in their lives, you can't really change them. There's that funny saying, I don't know if you've heard that, but I love that one. Yeah. I've used it on my children. Sorry, you got me so late in your life that I really can't be changed. I'm just going to be this way. They're like,
we're just going to
eyes roll back.
Get what you get. Yeah.
Yeah, you got what you get. Don't be upset, Don't
be upset.
But I think there's a good fight to be had. And I mean, fight not in a physical fight, but in a battle for, for justice again, going back to this justice and, tying it into who I am. I think about it. I feel that my life as an example, not that it's perfect by any stretch or imagination, but that, I try to live it in a way that actually matches what I think and speak. And I think it's it's hard to always be on top of it and be in that,
of course,
model kind of, mode of operation. But I feel because I have kids, because I own a business, I train people that work, do the work that we do. And I have to set an example. And I feel like I do the best I can. I try to be open-minded. I try to, my kids have friends that are all kinds of, colors and types and sizes and shapes and backgrounds. And I love all of them. And I feel like that my love of all of them and my acceptance of them, and I open my home to them. Everybody, this is a safe haven. That's what I always say. And I want people who may not feel welcomed or accepted or liked anywhere else to be able to come here. And that's my way of opening up to the world, to say, do I need to say that I'm anti-racist? I don't think I need to say that. I think I just told you who I am by saying you're welcome here. Everybody is welcome here. This is your safe haven. This is your peaceful spot to come where maybe you can't be who you need to be or who you really are anywhere else. You come here.
Yeah.
That says it all. I don't need to spell it out. Right. It's
right. Well, that's the conversation I had with my sister in the one of the first episodes. It was a really short episode, but that's what we were talking about. She was like, people look at everything that's going on and they see all these big things and they're like, well, do I need to join this protest? Do I need to do this? And just like, no, you don't need to do any of that. Actually, what you can just do is change your world where you are. So be open, like you just said, say this is a safe place and make it so, because that is going to change someone's life. And if you change one, you can change more, because what is it? It's a drop. Even the smallest drop creates ripples.
It's so funny you say that. And a couple of months ago, one of my oldest son's friends is a rap musician in Boston, and he needed a place to do a music video. And he's like, hey, Mama, could we use your backyard? Because I have a huge backyard, and he knows this. and he knows I'm not going to say no, right? So impromptu, like overnight, you know, 15, 20 kids from Roxbury, Mattapan, wherever, I don't know where they're all from. They're all from the city, right? For a little country girl out here in Wayland. And they come down the driveway, and I don't know what they expected, you know, and I don't know what they were thinking, but, you know, I brought out food and drinks, and I'm being the hostess because that's how I am. And they're all hugging me when they're leaving. They're like, thanks, Mama. You know, we had no idea what this was going to be like. This was perfect. And I thought, you know, without much dialogue, without much conversation, those 15, 20 kids from the city who didn't look a thing like me, walked away with a very different perspective. And that in those few hours they were at my home. And it's like, that's what you do. You don't really need to have big discussions. You can have them, but sometimes it's a small act. It's a small pebble with this ripple effect. And that's what I do. That's how I can, you know, I know that's what I can control. You know, one of the things that's come up in the last few months is people talking about, you know, being overwhelmed and what can I control? There's so many things we can't control. Well, that was something I could control. I could say yes or no. I said yes. I accepted that this was going to happen. There was going to be a lot of loud music and jamming and some other things that I won't mention. And, you know, it was a few hours of my life. My son, my youngest son, was in the video. He rode his motorcycle and his gear. And everything. The coolest thing. My chickens were in the video. Truck was in the video. You know, it was perfect. And so they came and they went like a movie crew, like boom, 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 done. And I thought, you know, whose life has been changed by this? Well, obviously my bonus son, Tyler, but he, you know, other than him, who already knows me and knows what I'm all about, those other folks, like now their life has been slightly changed. And you know, it can't be the same after that experience. So it's sometimes a small act. I think we all think we have to do big things, like to go to a protest. I don't go to protests. I don't like crowds. I have a fear of crowds. So I'm not going to a protest. I will have a conversation. I will share posts. I will support the organization financially or volunteer. I will have any conversation with anybody anytime, but I don't go to protests. It's not who I am.
And
you're not going to see me
not
called Boston.
Everyone's not called to go to protest. Everyone's not called to be on the very front of the line. You know, if you feel that that's where you fit in, then that's where you get in where you fit in is what my, you know, on another episode, Kevin said, my friend Kevin, who is a diversity, equity, and inclusion vice president at University of Virginia. He was on an episode and another episode that's coming up soon. But that's what he said. You know, he's like, just get in where you fit in. Where you fit is where you can do the best work. If you're trying to push yourself to being where you don't fit, where you don't feel comfortable, where you're not fully able to be yourself, you're doing a detriment to yourself and to the cause, because you're never going to produce your best. So be your best self, get in where you fit in. And if that is sharing posts, making donations, if that is speaking up when something comes up, when things happen, that is what you're called to do. And that is enough.
Right. And I'm glad you say it out loud, because I think I think some people need to hear that, because there's a lot of pressure to do the right thing, whatever that means, right? You have to, like, what are your strengths? Where can I be best utilized? Well, in that given moment, in that example, I was best utilized by opening my home to folks to do a music video. And that's what I did. I could do it. I would do it again. You know, so I help out, you know, where my abilities are, where my personality fits, where my history fits, where everything, you know, I don't try to do things that go against the grain, because number one, it wouldn't be authentic and it wouldn't be natural. And I feel like people would know, you know. Most people that know me well know that I don't like crowds and that I don't go to big, you know, like if I am at a bigger event, like even conferences, sometimes, I went to a big conference in Houston last March, and it was right after I got certified as a woman-owned business, and the summit for the National We Bank organization was in Houston. And of course, I lived there for many years, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go for sure. I wasn't thinking about the crowd aspect of it. Then I heard, like, 650 women attend this event. I was like, like panic struck in. I'm like, what am I going to do? And it's so funny. So this is a great story. Like, a woman who kind of like was assigned to me as a coach because I was going to be in a pitch competition at that event. And she was like, we were talking about it. I told her of my kind of my fear of crowds and these big conferences. And she broke it down for me. She's like, Drita, guess what? I'm going to give you permission not to attend every single thing on the agenda.
Yeah.
You feel that you need to take a break and go to your hotel room.
Right.
And it was like simple advice, obvious advice, but I needed to hear it in order for me to be successful in that conference and make it through it. And it's exactly what I did. I thought of her. I thought of her words. I was feeling overwhelmed. I said, I'm going to go to my room. Just going to chill for a while and look at the four walls and do nothing.
Yes.
And it helped me get through it. That, and the first person I met is a wonderful woman, Yolanda, in Houston. She works at Shell, and she was the person giving out, like the little labels that you put on your name badge, like, which women's business group are you with? Like ours is CWE for this part of Massachusetts. First time attendee. And it was like peanut butter.
Nice.
And we were just, and so the very first person I meet at the conference is this highly welcoming, engaging, accepting, opening human. And we're Facebook friends. And next time I go to Houston, I'm going to see her. But it's
nice.
It's kind of like, it's the little things in life, right? It's the little
things. Absolutely. The little things, we discount the little things, but the little things, they're the things that build up to the big things, right? Yeah. So we cannot discount them. We have to take everything into account for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have covered a lot of ground. So if we're celebrating, let's say we're down 2 years, 3 years down the line, and we're really celebrating something that has happened in the industry or, for social justice, or what would that be? Like we're partying. You like to party. So
I do.
Party.
Yeah. I think I would celebrate if I knew that anybody that committed an act of injustice based on racism was actually served the proper sentence, was actually punished for their crime, was actually called out. That to me would be cause for celebration. I would feel good about that. And we all know the happenings of 2020 have been strange, and some of that has included some highly, publicized cases of people who clearly mistreated, injured, killed because of their skin color, because of how they look. And I think I don't want to live in a world that allows for that. I want to live in a world and celebrate in a world that does not allow that to happen. I think we need to be done with that. We need to move forward into a moment where everybody is accountable for their actions, no matter what. No cover-ups, no silencing, no pat on, slap on the wrist.
Slap on the wrist.
No, you did this. This is what the consequence is.
Yeah.
We got it on camera, buddy. We're done. There's this clear action, action and consequence. And I think then I would celebrate. Then I would feel like, okay, we have gone past the corruption. We've gone past the racism. We've gone past the mistreatment, special treatment. This person gets this, that person gets that. And it's clear to most of us why. To really even that out and move past those kinds of situations where people are devastated by the outcome of a ruling, that so-and-so did this and they got off basically with nothing, like a slap on the wrist and 2 years in jail and move on, or whatever it is. It's like, that's got to stop. That has just got to stop for me to feel like, hooray, humankind has made it to an elevated
We've
place.
Taken another rung. We've stepped up a rung.
We've got to step up a couple of rungs. I get so like I said to you earlier, like some days I feel like, yay, we're going the right. And then it's like, nope, just took 10 steps back again, and it's this sort of ping pong, yo-yo, whatever you want to call it, whatever analogy makes the most sense. But it's like, it's that swinging feeling. It's not like every single case is treated with fairness and just a just outcome. It's one case in 1,000,000, one case in 1,000, one case in 100. It's like we got to get it down to where everybody gets the same treatment, no matter what. I don't know that. I mean, I know that it's not easy to get there. I'm not foolish. I'm a realist. Course. I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist.
Right. I mean, we all know that, but we all are hoping that the hard work gets done, because nothing worth doing isn't hard.
Right. We
Right.
have to strive for that. We have to, shoot for the stars, because if we just say,
Yeah.
this one case, Breonna Taylor, somebody,
Hmm.
it's not one case.
No, it's
She
not one
just gets
case.
highlighted. George King, they got highlighted
Yes.
for whatever reason. We know that there's many cases that don't make the news. There's so many
Right.
more that don't make the news, right? So the
Right.
ones that are being highlighted by the media, we won't go there, but whatever, they're being highlighted. So let's move past that and just think, okay, that's it. It's a representation of what's going on. So we need to deal with the underlying reasons why it's actually happening. It's not just we want justice for all, but what's happening in those places
Right.
where this consistently
Yes.
happens, and how can we instill change from the foundation up so that these things stop happening, so that there is a shift, and that we do raise the bar on how people are treated. And I think it's it's a fight we have to fight. We all have to be in it. It's not easy at all, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it because of that. And
No,
that's it. We
it
got
not
to do
being
it.
easy is not an excuse, is
Right.
what I always say.
Otherwise you wouldn't go
Not
work
an
out. You think
excuse.
lifting weights is easy for me? No, but I still go do it because I know it's good for my health, right? Like
That's exactly, that's exactly right. And
right.
that's
We
exactly
want to
what I
celebrate.
say.
Yeah. So we're going to put the goal is that for that big celebration, that worldwide massive celebration we want to have,
Yes.
we got to fight for it. We got to earn that celebration. And I think, I do have a lot of faith in the younger people. I have faith in upcoming musicians, people who are maybe, not quite famous, but are using their voice, literally their artistry, their music, their actual art, their spoken word, their everything, to really promote this world that we want to see. And I think we have to, like, another kind of realm of not being discriminatory is to take young people's thoughts into account and bring them on board and help them continue to fight, because you don't want this to die out. You don't want people to not feel that the fight isn't worth it, that you really have to help them see that, yes, you're being vocal, you're speaking out, you're making a small change in your tiny community will have a ripple effect, and encouraging that. And maybe kind of what that is really the mentorship. And so many of us do it sort of naturally and informally, and there's obviously more formal channels for it too, but I really I feel like that's where our superpowers come in too, and we can as a role model, as somebody who could help younger people to really come into those roles too of leadership and speaking out against social injustice. So
I love it. So is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would have wanted me to ask you?
Oh my goodness, I feel like I don't even know. I think you know a lot about me in this last hour. So I don't even know how long it's been, but
I know we've hit a lot of points, which is fantastic, which is the whole point, getting it out there.
Yeah.
So
I think the only thing I would say is, like, just as a company, I can tell you, and you already heard some of my individual stories, but I'm a small business. We only have myself, and my older son is my only other full-time employee. But I think as I see the company growing, and as I look into the future, and I know we're going to grow, and there's a very specific and intentional goal to grow in the coming years, that I want to be sure to bring in people and bring people into the company that do represent diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures, languages. And we kind of, well, by default, we've done that because my son is ethnically diverse, part Brazilian, but born here. And then my background as well. Our only other employee that's, she's a part-time virtual assistant. She is actually Hispanic, of a Mexican-American family from Houston. So we're kind of like on that path, and I hate to say, well, I guess I can say it wasn't 100% intentional that way, but it has happened that way.
Right.
But I think, again, as we're intentionally growing, I want to intentionally attract folks to the company and to the business that do represent even more diversity. And sometimes when I think people, and this, when people say diversity, they always think skin color or, ethnicity, but it's not. Diversity is so much more than that.
Yes.
So it's
we're talking about gender and religion and ability and everything, all the things that get put to the fringes because they're not able-bodied white male, actually.
Pretty much. Yeah.
if we're going to be very clear,
we're going to really like spell it out, right?
Yes. Yeah. So there are times when I am more specific and I say racial diversity
Right.
or I say, we're talking about the LGBTQ community,
Right.
or we're talking about the differently abled community.
Right.
Sometimes it gets more specific and sometimes I leave it under the larger umbrella, but yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And I want to keep that open mind and use the broad term of diversity when I say that for myself. And I feel like that it's not like it's going to be hard for me to do that, but I want to put it out there. I want to manifest that so that when we do bring on whoever the next person might be, that is sort of a qualification, if you will, or that's something that's going to be on our radar for.
Right.
And, it kind of like our business, because we work with languages and, different cultures, it sort of naturally lends itself to that anyway.
Right.
So for like the person that is the virtual assistant, I definitely I said in my head intentionally, I want somebody who's bilingual. I want somebody who's bicultural. I want somebody who has more diversity than me.
Right.
So I think I'm going to continue in that vein. And I think that's important for other business owners to not fear that, because sometimes I think it could be like, oh, bringing on somebody who's totally different, or maybe their native language is something other than English and I need them to speak English. And yes, they do speak it, but they have an accent, or they sometimes say a word that's, funny or whatever. Not to be afraid of that, because you're going to learn so much from that person. They're going to bring in something to your business and your world that you didn't have before, and so embrace it. Absolutely. I guess, don't fear it, just embrace it and really take them in. Learn from them.
Yeah. So where can people find your business? Your business is, tell us a little bit about your business and then where they can find you.
Sure, absolutely. So it's MAPA Translations, and we are everywhere. We're on LinkedIn. We have a website. Okay. Maybe the best place to start is the website. It is sort of under construction. We are revamping it, but all the key information is there. It's MAPA. So MAPA translation.com. We are also on all the social media and LinkedIn. We have 3 main divisions. So we provide written translation, interpreter services, and also multilingual voiceover, including English. I've learned that when I say multilingual voiceover, people are like, oh, do you work in English? I'm like, yeah, kind of.
It's a language.
Yeah. It is a language. It is one of the language, not the only language, right?
Right.
It's like, I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. But just, again, funny. It's like my world is so multilingual. Yes. That, to me, like, of course it means English, right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah, those are our 3 main services. We've been in business since 2007 and really love the fact that we have grown from this very small company that started out working with mostly K through 12 schools and now has grown into serving many nonprofits. We work with some other partner agencies. We like to call them our power partners that provide a myriad of services where we're sort of the fill in the gap. Maybe they provide a service where they're doing it in English, but they need to do it in multiple languages and fill those gaps. And so we come in and fill them. That's really been a great experience the last couple of months to the year. We've really seen a growth in these partnerships with video production companies, with communications agencies, people that are trying to reach different markets. And especially during the last, 6 or 7 months of 2020, we've seen a greater need for people on the state level, state agencies, cities and towns, really trying to reach the population to pass information along about safety and safety measures and things like that in languages other than English so that everybody really understands what's going on. So we've really seen a great growth in that area. And my favorite part of it is voiceover because I'm a voice actor, as you know. I love the acting part. So that's always fun. And I'm starting to dabble in directing and other things on the other side of the mic and the camera. So lots of excitement.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Now, usually my last question is this. We are on Diversity Dish.
Yes.
So what is your favorite dish?
Oh, my goodness.
Love.
Well, it's funny. So I have a Mediterranean background. My father was from Albania.
Yeah.
And I feel like Mediterranean food is sort of like the thing that calls to me most. And I'm pretty sure I was Italian in another lifetime because I love Italian food. And I would if you made me like choose one dish, I would say eggplant parm. I love eggplant parmesan. I love it. There's just something about it. Over a nice plate of ziti or fettuccine, the side salad and a glass of Merlot, we're good to go.
We're good.
You don't need anything else.
Good.
What more do I need? Oh yeah, maybe some bread and some company.
A little bit of bread.
So you come over and eat it with me.
Absolutely. That sounds really yummy. I love eggplant parm as well.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I have many favorites, but when you twist my arm and you're like, Drita, pick one.
Yeah, that's
hands down.
Nice.
Hands down.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It has been such a pleasure to share in your aura.
And yours too.
Thank you. And so I will definitely put your links in the show notes so that everyone can find you later on for all their translation and that sort of thing. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, please be sure to subscribe, download, rate, review, and share. It would also mean the world to me if you became a patron over at Patreon. The information is in the show notes. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.